What is up, guys? Welcome back to another Geek-A-Lot video. In this one, I'm going to be building the ultimate small form factor 4K gaming PC build, featuring the brand new Corsair 2000D Airflow, a 7900 XTX 4K beast of a graphics card, and top-end Ryzen 7 7800 X3D processor. Let's do this. The Tempest GP27U gaming monitor is a stunning quantum dot mini LED monitor that boasts a huge 576 local dimming zones. The crisp, high-resolution 4K panel provides stacks of detail and is backed up by a competitive 160Hz refresh rate. With a 1 millisecond response time, 27-inch form factor, and HDMI 2.1 support to run the latest consoles at up to 4K 120Hz, it really does tick a lot of boxes. You can learn more about the GP27U at the first link in the description below. This video will be split into two core sections. First, I'll be looking at all the parts I picked for this build, how to assemble them, and also some alternative component choices to consider. And second, I'll be looking at performance. Does a small form factor build like this one make sacrifices in thermals, overclocking headroom and performance? Or actually, is it feasible to build a very compact build without any of the sacrifices or compromises you might traditionally have to make? Now let's start off, shall we, by looking at this, the Corsair 2000D Airflow that makes today's whole build possible. Now, small form factor cases have been in varying degrees of popularity in recent years, but one style that has proven to be pretty solid is this, the sort of vertical tower. We first saw it with the NZXT H1, which obviously had a few of its own challenges throughout its lifespan, and Corsair have thrown their hat into the ring with their first mini ITX case in years. Now, in terms of the build quality and design, it's pretty clever, got this nice magnetic removable top panel. All of the other side panels are also easily removable, and taking these off gives us a good insight into the interior layout, design, and what on earth Corsair were thinking. Now, taking a look in here, you'll see first of all we've got a 360mm radiator mount with your motherboard and GPU sitting behind, almost creating a bit of a PC build based sandwich. Airflow is pretty solid with three 120mm RGB fans pre-installed here, and then of course any extra additional ones for your radiator, and potentially even further scope here near where the graphics card's going to go for yet more airflow. It's available in black or white colorways, has the I/O on the bottom, and could be the perfect build for those of you without a humongous setup to actually store all of your parts. You've obviously got great compatibility as well for a wide range of components, so I'll be looking at this 7900 XTX later, and why potentially it's a great fit for a case like this one. But of course, inside a mini ITX case, we need the right size motherboard with a powerful CPU, motherboard, and RAM combo to boot. And that's where this comes in, the Asus ROG X670E iGaming Wi-Fi. Now, this is actually one of my favorite mini ITX motherboards ever. Asus have gone and just, wow, I mean, the whole thing is pretty ridiculous. They've looked at the small form factor and gone, how do we add all of the functionality? Build up on the PCB. So you can see we've got these stacked Gen 5 M.2 slots. We've got this little add-in card just here for your USB headers and SATA, and you can see it just pulls out for nice, easy use and easy connectivity. You do get a decent bit of overclocking support for the processor. There's like a fan above our VRMs, and the I/O is pretty bonkers too. 40 gigabit USB-C, mini display port, 2.5 gig Ethernet. It's just absolutely crackers, and comes with all the PCIe Gen 5 goodness that you could want to help future-proof yourself into the years to come. Inside the motherboard, I'll be adding into place the CPU, and this right here is the Ryzen 7 7800 X3D. Basically, the best consumer desktop gaming CPU on the market right now. Might sound very complicated, but it's actually very simple. If you want an amazing desktop gaming CPU, this is the one to go for. So let's pop the processor in, give it a little bit of a wiggle, then add our socket cover down. I always get a bit nervous during this part of the process. Retention arm, lovely stuff, and the black plastic will pop off nice and easily. In terms of RAM or memory, that's the next part on the list, and this right here is a 32GB kit of the Viper Gaming Extreme 5. Basically, this is their awesome DDR5 kit with a speed of 8 8,000 megahertz. 8,000 megahertz. Like, what? So fast. Oh my goodness me. How much of those speeds we'll actually be able to achieve on this motherboard, I'm not quite sure. I think RAM optimization for Ryzen 7000 is making, huge strides forward, but still has a little bit of a progress to go, shall we say. But for now, I mean, definitely not going to turn this thing down, and we are trying to build in this system a balls to the walls gaming PC that ticks all of the boxes. And 32 gigabytes, by the way, is the ideal amount for a build like this one. So a couple of RAM DIMM slots on this board, with it being a mini ITX design, 2 rather than 4. Bit of pressure, lovely stuff. Repeat for as many RAM DIMMs as we've got. Nice and easy. And you can see the motherboard assembly starting then to come together. Into the motherboard, I'll also be adding this, the Corsair MP600GS, a 2TB NVMe drive. I've been mega impressed with this MP600GS since Corsair sent it over not too long ago, really. Great speeds, you're not quite saturating the whole of the Gen 4 bus, but still 5 gigabytes a second, read and write, give or take, and it's very affordable. I think I saw the 1TB drive on Newegg for $55 US for a Gen 4 NVMe drive. Really, really amazing value. This is going to pop into any one of the numerous M.2 slots on the stack on the bottom of the motherboard and provide nice, speedy Windows boot up times and plenty of room as well for all the latest games on there. 2,000 gigabytes of storage, more than enough for most gaming PC builds. Once that's done, the motherboard assembly is ready to be moved into the case, and it always surprises me how small these little Diddy Mini ITX boards are and how densely packed. Amazing, sort of feats of engineering. In order to put it into the case, we do need to just take out this radiator bracket. So this will go in at the end once everything else is in, making the order of the build today perhaps a little bit different to what you might be used to in a conventional build. That's because this essentially blocks the access to any of the other components within the system once it's been installed. So let's remove these screws. That then, in theory, just clips out nice and simple and exposes the motherboard tray. Now, there's a lot of cables and stuff at play, so we definitely need to we definitely need to move those. And then you'll be able to see just here, that is where the motherboard tray is. The I/O is then going to poke out here at the back for sort of relatively easy access. So let me pop the motherboard in first, then we can go ahead and try and get the power supply, graphics card, and all the other bits in afterwards. I'm then going to spin the case around, and you'll be able to see here, this is where the power supply is going to go. So it is all very tight because the power supply is going to butt up to the top of the motherboard anyway. This is the Corsair SF1000L. I was quite keen on adding into this build a 7900 XTX or a 4090, something with plenty of wattage consumption, and that's where this power supply with its plenty of wattage will come into play. So 80 plus gold, SFX form factor, SFX standing of course for small form factor, and it still has all the cables and connectors we could possibly need. And then here we have it. I see these all the time, but every time I see them, they kind of surprise me in just how small they are. It's not only the kind of length and the width, but it's also the height and the thickness of these units is super, super compact. You've also got these new mini ATX3 standard power connections, which means for a mini ITX unit, there's actually more room for more cables, which is always good. In terms of the cables required, it is important in a mini ITX build to plan more closely exactly which ones you'll need. Oh, gosh. Corsair, you're testing me. Right, now inside of here, we will need a few different cables. So the motherboard is the first one. That's this large one over here. SATA power we'll definitely need for RGB controllers and stuff. PCIe power, I think it's 2 8-pins, but I'm definitely going to have to check that. CPU power cable, we're going to need, let's have a look. How many of those? One 8-pin CPU power cable. And then potentially, as I say, maybe we'll need a third 8-pin PCI power connector. The easiest way for me to check is to unbox our PowerColor Hellhound graphics card with its monstrous 24 gigabytes of video memory to actually find out. So bear with me. At a quick glance, it is just the two. So 2 8-pin power connections, meaning all the cables we have here are going to be enough for what we need. So just to clarify, 2 PCIe 6+ 2-pin cables, the CPU power cable, SATA, and the motherboard. They're all the different cables we'll need. Okay, so I've concluded that maybe that cable management hole wasn't really intended for all of those cables. So instead, I'm just going to push them through behind the motherboard tray, which is undoubtedly going to be a little bit more messy, but it will at least allow power supply to actually be screwed in. The only problem then is it just creates this sort of massive cable mess, which I'm not mad keen on. So give me a few moments. I'm going to try and run as many cables as I can, get the rest out the way, and I'll rejoin you to hopefully a little bit more of a manageable build situation. Okay, I'm very happy with that. So power supply's in, I've organized some of the cables, and the next step is to install install the GPU. Now, I'm not super familiar with this card, but I think it's got these cool kind of RGB fans on, which may look great, coincidentally, in the case. What this card does do, though, is it fits perfectly into the form factor made available. Now, let me just sort of hover it in to show you what I mean. So this isn't going to be perfectly installed right now, but you can see that's going to fit basically spot on. And if I spin the case around and remove just temporarily so you can see this dust filter, the fans are actually right up against the mesh, meaning the GPU will be able to pull in fresh air from behind the case. So let me go ahead and remove, well, take out the unscrewed graphics card first of all, push back the PCI retention clip, and then take out these 2 or 3 thumb screws at the bottom here to allow for the graphics card to be installed. That is actually now looking considerably more tidy than I thought. The graphics card seems to fit really well. Corsair, you are winning me over bit by bit, but the ultimate test hasn't happened yet, and that is popping in the radiator. Now, I've made a bit of a doozy. I wanted to go all Corsair. I think particularly iCUE in terms of cooling and monitoring for this system will be mega useful, but I haven't got any 360mm Corsair coolers in black other than this one, which has got a screen on it. Now, obviously, the screen, which installs here, isn't going to be much use because the radiator is going to cover it. So don't buy this cooler with the screen. Buy a different one. I'll link it down below. Don't make the same mistakes I am making right in front of you. What it does do, though, is it gives us 3 of Corsair's ML Elite RGB fans. They'll look great. That's going to give us 6 fans in terms of the case, and then another 3 on the GPU. And it's relatively easy to install with the included mounting hardware. Now then, let's grab the cooler, take the water block off first of all. That's going to give us nice, easy access. So we pop these brackets on, one on the top, and then one additionally on the bottom. A drop of thermal paste is then all we really need on the 7800X3D, so that's nice and simple. Before adding the cooler plate into place, so 1 screw there, and then just another screw on this side over here. Then the screen water block goes on and all the cables can be run. And then the radiator, which I'm hoping is going to stay put, or not, with some exhaust fans like this, is going to clamp onto the radiator mount like so. You might be wondering why the fans are in exhaust. That's because the front fans are intake, and then why they're exhausting through the radiator rather than in front. That's because all the cables in here are a nightmare fuel when it comes to fans, and we should have enough pressure that these fans will be okay to be mounted on the rear. There are sacrifices to make with a Mini ITX build, undoubtedly, especially one that's trying to cram in quite so much hardware. And then, in theory, this just pops into place. This feels a bit easy so far. No. Oh, I've jinxed it now. Yes. No. No. Right. Nearly. Basically, I've just got to move the whole radiator assembly up the bracket very slightly to increase the clearance. This is where you definitely need one of these fancy $25 electric screwdrivers, but don't over torque the screws, because that can be bad news. Oh, look, and it closes. That is amazing. Have a look at that. I mean, isn't that incredible? So we've got GPU fans here. We've got radiator exhaust fans here, and then 3 case intake fans there. Unbelievable. And a couple of screws, and this whole thing has been sealed up. And to show you I'm not cheating, there are a couple of cables at the rear to cable manage. Literally 3 fan cables and our CPU cooler, all of which are going to plug into the same hub, which I'm hoping to tuck just in here. A fair play, Corsair. And remember as well, it's not got like a built-in custom bespoke all-in-one. This is using a standard 360mm AIO, a standard off-the-shelf GPU, no PCI riser. Very, very impressive. Let me pull the panels back on, boot this thing up and take a look at just how good it looks when it's all powered up. Hopefully it looks good, I don't know. And I'll rejoin you in a few moments to take a look at the performance of this very unique little machine. Of performance, this build stacks up really well. The 7900 XTX might not be quite as powerful as a 4090, but it does deliver some incredible 4K results nonetheless at a much, much lower price point. Take Hogwarts Legacy for example. At 4K high settings, the 7900 XTX delivers 83 FPS. The 4090 by comparison would give you about 90-95 frames per second on average, so not a huge delta here, and the game providing at 4K a very enjoyable gaming experience. Titles like Star Wars Jedi Survivors, a similar story, 67 FPS at 4K high settings for the average frame rate here. With the game running at stock settings, enable FSR for a little bit of help in the frame rate department, and the FPS jumps up to 87. Just shy of 90 FPS at 4K, not bad. Move through into Warzone 2 at 4K, high settings once again, and the build breaks past the 100 FPS barrier for the first time in our testing so far, 117 FPS on average, with consistent 90 and 99 percentile results. In Fortnite at 1080p competitive settings, rolling that resolution down and cranking the frame rate up, and the build delivers 338 FPS on average. Once again, frame rates are very consistent, showing this build is a monster for 4K high visual fidelity and 1080p high performance gaming. Games like Apex Legends stack up well too, even 4K resolution here, and the build surpasses 190 FPS on average, 90 and 99 percentiles as low as 166, so not a great deal of deviation in the frame rate department, while other titles like Overwatch 2 at 4K Ultra also stack up well. 235 FPS on average makes for an impressive showing. This little pocket rocket of a build with a 7900 XTX certainly isn't to be messed with, and is well worth considering if you want something small but most certainly mighty. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to get subscribed. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.